Welcome back for another OG Show Live. Mr. Randall, how you doing?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Reel Down.
Welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for News.
Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to, once again, the Bass Kayak and Beers.
Brother, this is the final cast.
Another segment of Chasing the Tide, your saltwater connection on the Paddle Fin.
Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Feather and Fur. Your host, Brad.
Welcome back to the Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal.
Hey, welcome back to Off the Water.
Suzuki here with Adventures of Outdoor Woman podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Rusty Hook Kayak Fishing Podcast.
We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Eastport Marina on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake. For all your lodging, kayaking, go to eastport.info. Yak Gadget for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com.
You're listening to the final cast on Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. I'm Brad.
I'm Matt.
How you doing?
I'm good. No, I was going to start the intro, and then I was like, I don't know why, but I forgot to speak. Like, I was just looking at the camera, and I was like, I should talk right now in my head. And then it was like, I can't talk. What's going on? So I'm really glad you said something when you did, because I would have just sat there like an idiot. So,
hey, I thought I was starting it off anyway.
Well,
so
then it worked out.
Kind of good. It worked out this week. Yeah. So what's new?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. Let's see. I got the new Bonafide rod for everyone out there. I like it so far. I'm gonna have a post on it at the end of. You'll see it on my Instagram when this comes out. Have a post on that. Pretty excited about that. Pretty dope. And of course, you know, I had to work Black Friday, but the joy of 2022 is everything's on the internet now. So I don't whoosh that where I work, it's not busy on Black Friday. We're just open because everyone else is. I think I talked to like 15 people all day. It was great. But Cyber Monday's awesome. So got in on the Tackle Warehouse sale and got a couple other things. Got my wife's Christmas knocked out, so I don't have to worry about that anymore, which is
heck yeah, dude.
It's great. It's great.
I'm slacking. I hate Christmas shopping, man.
Dude, so do I. Last year, I bought Stacey's gift in like July, and I was like, "Merry Christmas." There you go. She's like, "What do you mean?" I was like,
"Your birthday's like the day after Christmas, so you always had your parties in July growing up."
That's true. Yeah, like all my parties were like we either went paintballing in July and then went to Cece's Pizzas after, or what else did we do? Laser tag in July. Like we did everything when it was hot. Because my mom's like, "This is Jesus's birthday. Okay, you're not going to be here on Jesus's birthday."
Yeah.
No, she just didn't want me to like struggle. Like, hey kids, I'm having a party at my house because when we were younger, it snowed here way more than it does now. But it's like, oh, there's 2 feet of snow outside, and we're gonna sit inside and watch TV because that's literally all you can do. So yeah, we did fun stuff. Good memories. But other than that, I don't have a whole lot going on. So what have you been up to? Because you have some great news.
Well, you already know what I'm gonna say. While you're sitting there working, I was out on the river. I caught my PB.
Yeah.
20 7/8.
Tank.
Thing was huge.
Tank.
All mouth. So.
Oh my gosh.
That was awesome.
Run us through play by play. Go.
I was fishing this section of the river. Not gonna say obviously.
Well, duh.
I fished for 2 hours without a single bite, throwing the jerk bait. Put the jerk bait down after an hour, picked up the Ned rig, threw that for like 30 minutes, nothing. I was about to call it quits, paddled over back up to the bridge where I started, and I cast it in between 2 laydowns with a spinnerbait. And I let that spinnerbait sink all the way down, and I just started slow rolling it. That thing just hammered it immediately. I was like, oh, crap. He started zigzagging back and forth. I'm pretty sure he bounced off one of the bridge abutments, ran back under the log, ran back the other way. It was nuts. My line got caught in my smart cleat on the bow of my shoalie. And
I can see it now.
I was getting anxious, man. I was getting anxious. Like I was like, I don't know what to do. So he almost got off.
You know what would have happened if you were still using LYN line?
It would have broken. I would have cried.
And you would have lost it. And then you would have just jumped off. You would have unzipped your dry suit, kept it on, so it filled with water. So you became a rock and you just sunk to the bottom of the river and died. Because I would have done that.
But that's not the case, though. I landed the fish and it was awesome, too.
And this story and experience is a great teaching moment. Just because certain techniques are winter specific, like jerk baits, slow finesse baits, do not be afraid to switch it up. I know dudes who will throw jerk baits all winter and catch good fish, and then there'll be days they don't catch anything, and they throw a 6-inch glide bait out, and guess what they're hitting? A 6-inch glide bait. For whatever stupid reason, they want that. So don't be afraid to switch it up and make moves, because as a winter fishing, I would never even think spinner bait. It would be down here next to my chair till spring, and I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
So,
hey, my favorite quote from Glenn Young from Z-Man: "The fish don't read the same books we do."
The fish don't read the same books we do. Now, I will say, I mean, if you just we'll go off that knowledge. You throw a spinnerbait the rest of winter, and I'll throw a jerkbait. We'll see who catches more fish.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. So just because they don't read the same books, so I'm saying you can change it every now and then. Now, I'm not telling people to go out there and be like, yeah, go on out there and throw a 12-inch glide bait in Ohio in the river and smallmouth elite. No, that's stupid. But change it up. Just change up their patterns, throw some stuff they don't know and they haven't seen. Maybe they were wanting to bite it. Just saying. Yep. Don't twist my words.
Well,
all right.
Enough of that. With that said, man, all right, so we've done a cold water episode recently, but that me and Matt, we're no experts on the matter. We were sharing what we have so far. So we're bringing in somebody else that can go a little bit more in depth about it, why he picks the stuff he does.
I literally have some of this stuff because he's talked about it. So, like,
yeah, there you go. So,
yeah,
without further ado, we got Chuck Earls coming on the show to talk about cold water fishing. What's up, man?
How you guys doing?
Good.
Oh, living the dream, brother.
Do you want to start off by introducing yourself, like what you do, where you're from, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. I'm Chuck Earls. I run Lake Erie kayak fishing guided adventures. I'm the cold water expert in the area. Also do a lot of speaking gigs, presentations, and seminars on safety on the water, especially in the wintertime, because here in Ohio, 6 months out of the year, that water can kill you very quickly. As a matter of fact, we just had a young man die while I was in Portugal. He was out there in shorts and a t-shirt. Early November, the water temperatures, high 40s. He was wearing his PFD, but unfortunately, that doesn't give you much time. In that frigid water, you got to be able to get out, get back in your kayak and get back to shore, but most importantly, be protected. So you always want to, dress for immersion, dress for the swim. You never want to think it's not going to happen to me, because it will.
No, I agree with that. And I've said this story before many times. I flipped my kayak last year for the first time, debated on wearing my dry suit that day. The water temperature was 70, air temperature was 60 outside, but there was 30-mile-an-hour wind. And the rest of the float, I shivered the whole time. I'm like, I should have wore the dry suit. That was not fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people don't realize, especially because we are in Ohio, like you said, and we're this freak state who does our weather's bipolar half the time. So when we have swings, like today it was 60 degrees when last week it was snowing.
Yeah.
So people don't realize, oh, well, it's 65 degrees out. I can go out and a long sleeve and wear shorts and I'll be fine. They don't understand just because it got warmer here, the water didn't just spike up. That's not how it works. That water's still in the mid to low 40s. And just because it's 65 air temp, it doesn't help you, because 65 air temp feels like 32 once you come back out of the water and you're freezing and you're not wearing the right stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So where do you want to start here? I know. Well, let's start with the obvious, like the dry suit. Is there like a specific brand that you like to stick to, or is there like multiple brands that you recommend?
Well, the one that I'm in is it's a Kokatat Hydrus Supernova semi-dry suit. What that means is it has a neoprene neck gasket versus the restrictive latex neck gasket. I've tested it numerous times in the absolute worst conditions possible, and it does the job. Keeps me dry, keeps me safe. Now, the flip side, if you're going to be doing white water or surf ski or something like that, where you're going to be constantly immersion and rolling and under aggressive water, the full dry suit with the latex neck is definitely the way to go.
Okay, that's interesting. I know we've talked about that quite a bit, and everybody's like, "Oh, semi-dry suit, dry suit." I know the neoprene gasket's a lot more comfortable, but people are kind of hesitant to go towards that because they think that you're still going to get wet. So is that not the case with that?
Well, it's not 100% watertight. You might get a tablespoon or two down your back. But with the right underlayers, it's not going to make a difference. It just kind of wakes you up a little bit. And really that mainly only happens if you forget to cinch it down. So once you put your dry suit on, make sure it's cinched down, even if it's uncomfortable. As long as it's tight, you're pretty much good to go.
I wish I would have known that when I bought mine.
Yeah, Brad tried to try to explain this to me, and he was like, because I bought my dry suit this year. It's my first real experience on the water in such frigid temps. And he was like, yeah, just get the semi-dry suit. It's going to be way more comfortable. And I would say 3 clicks away. And I was like, dude, if I fall in, I for some reason was like, neoprene is great. I mean, I have it. My waders are neoprene. They work fine. It feels better. It's more comfortable. I was like, man, for some reason, I feel like that gasket's what's going to save my life. After the one time, and I had a volleyball in this thing for like a month and a half. The first time I go out, I didn't have a neck gaiter on underneath it, and all I feel is just getting choked out, and I can feel my skin getting irritated. And they're like, "Yeah, you got to wear something underneath it." And I was like, "Man, I should just got a semi-dry suit. This is stupid."
So speaking of that, wearing something underneath it basically is going to defeat the purpose because the water is going to wick through that neck gaiter or whatever fabric you have underneath and right into the dry suit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see? Yeah. So I was technically safer than both of you when I went out. So suck it.
Yeah, well, I think Justin was the one that told you to do that too, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, because he was like, yeah, I always wear something underneath it, which makes total sense because the water will wick through. I wonder, I tell you what, rabbit hole, this would be a great product investment to make something that you can attach to the inside of the neoprene or the gasket so it's comfortable but still holds its rigidity.
Yeah. I don't know if they could do that or
not. I'm not smart enough to do that, so I'm not. I mean, anybody listening out there who is intelligent, have at it. I won't even sue you. Maybe. So,
I mean, what it comes down to, at the end of the day, if you're going to be out there in your cold water gear, go out and test it. See how it's going to perform. Most importantly, see how your underlayers are going to perform in those temperatures. Because just guessing might put you in a potentially dangerous situation, especially what I do. We were almost 3 miles offshore today. The water temperature was 45 degrees. The wind was blowing a little bit. The air temperature was somewhere around 50. So without the right underlayers, you get in the water. I mean, a dry suit's going to keep you dry. It's not going to keep you warm.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, which is definitely something, I want to hit on this episode, and we'll get to the underlayers, but that's one thing. You read so much stuff where people are suggesting this or just suggesting, oh yeah, just wear, what you got up in your closet underneath it. And, I just want to, from someone who has tested it, because I'll be honest, I really need to, because I test everything else, but I just don't want to get in the water with my dry suit because I feel like something's wrong. I don't know. I just feel like it is. but I definitely need to do it just so I know, maybe just the feeling of it, and then to test what under layers I have. So I really want to go into that. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. Oh no, I started talking too much about something else and my brain is off the subject.
Were you going to talk about underlayers?
I wanted to go into that next. Yeah, but it was something about the dry suit and I can't remember what it is. I'll remember it eventually, hopefully before the show's over. But yeah, let's move into underlayers. I think that's just as important as your dry suit, because you kind of already said, just because your dry suit's going to keep you dry, not warm. So
yeah,
right. Well, when it comes to underlayers, it's really about the material. Some kind of synthetic fabric like polyester, wool, nylon, fleece. Preferably something that's going to give you those insulating properties, but not too much bulk. That's the problem when you just grab stuff out of your closet, or go to the thrift store, which I've done. Some of my best merino wool clothing has came from the thrift store, and I mean, you're saving a lot of money. Who cares if it's stained or has a little hole in it, as long as it does the job. Thin, tightly woven polyester works really good, and just layering it up. Most of the dry suit manufacturers build these things with the intention that you're going to have a couple of underlayers underneath. And of course, they also make their own versions of underlayers, which work great. But, if you're kind of working on a budget, don't cheap out on the dry suit. Get that, run to the thrift store, get the right kind of materials, the polyester, the nylon, the wool, the fleece, and layer it up like that. And then go out and jump in the cold water. But do it safely, close to a boat ramp, so you can just walk out if you need to, and make sure you got somebody on shore, preferably with a throw rope. That way, if something happens, you're not going to die out there.
Right.
There's a lot of things that you'll learn when you're out there actually testing your dry suit and your underlayers. You're going to learn how the water affects your hands. You're going to learn how the water and also the outside air temperature will affect your head and your central nervous system. Perfect example, one of the tests that I did, it was the water temperature was 32 degrees. I mean, there was 6 foot of slush in the water, and the air temperature was about 2 degrees with the wind chill.
Ooh.
So when I came out of that water and that air temperature hit my head, it was definitely a huge shock.
Oh, I bet.
So something like that, you're not going to know about it until you actually get out there in the water and test under safe conditions. The last thing you want to do is accidentally fall out of your kayak, be in a dangerous situation that now you have to work through those struggles that you don't even know you're going to have.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to pull up this picture just because we're talking about it right now. So this is like the infamous picture. Like, I always think of this every time I think of a dry suit.
I think I remember when the first time I saw it, me and Brad were talking about, I was like, dude, that just looks painful. Like, it doesn't, like, it just looks painful. And as someone, like, I've been through it's cold weather mountain training in the Marine Corps, where they send you out west, you go up in the mountains and you learn how to operate in snow and everything. And I remember we did a test. We didn't do the test. The Marine Corps had sent some Marines over to Norway, and they're like, yeah, be happy you're doing this, because they showed them in skis jumping into the lake with all their stuff on. And I was like, man, that just looks, I remember saying, I was like, that's stupid. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'll just get shot. I don't care. And and I saw that and I was like, dude, that dry suit must be the bee's knees. It's right before I bought mine. I was like, that's the seller right there. Because worst case, obviously, you're not doing this for fun. You're testing it, make sure, showing it. I mean,
well, it makes for a cool picture too.
It makes for an awesome Instagram post. I mean, that's social media gold right there.
Yeah.
But it just proves that the product worked. And I like how you brought up merino wool. I've recently kind of almost got Brad converted to merino wool, because he always complains about his feet being cold. I had the same issue until I found merino wool socks that I use for hunting. And I love merino wool because even when they're wet, they still keep their warming properties.
Right.
And we were out there that same day. He's like, yeah, my feet are just cold. I got, I think Brad typically will have a pair of socks, hand warmer, foot warmer, and then a pair of socks to keep them warm. He's like, my feet still get cold. I had one layer of merino wool on my feet. I felt great. So I'm glad you brought up merino wool, because I'm trying to convert as many people as I can, because that is a great fabric. It's fantastic.
There's another trick that you can do, some kind of antiperspirant on your feet to keep them from sweating. That's going to keep them from getting cold.
Okay, I have to try that. That's the biggest part of winter fishing I found so far that's been tough for me. Just my feet, no matter what I do, I layer socks. I have like a pair of like cheap wool socks. I've put hand warmers in my boots, and I just can't figure it out. So I guess my question is, like, obviously you got the merino wool socks. Is there anything else you're using for your feet?
Besides the dry suit booties, generally I'll wear the NRS boundary boots, or if it's really cold, I'll wear just regular winter hunting boots.
Mm-hmm.
And I know everybody's like, oh, you can't get back in your kayak with them. Well, I've done it 100 times. So I know it's going to work. Just like the dry suit. I mean, that picture was the most extreme test that we did. And really what I was testing is, could I go in those conditions, fall out of the kayak miles offshore? I didn't have the Torpedo at the time, so I'm working at 2 miles an hour on average. So if I'm 2 miles away from shore, that's an hour to get back after submersion. So I wanted to put myself in that situation. And then I spent like 3 hours outside afterwards. My beard froze. My PFD froze to me. I had to have a friend actually pull it off of me and then unthaw it just to get the zipper to work. But it makes a huge difference, though.
Yeah. Are you layering up on top of the merino wool socks with other pairs of socks?
Depending on the temperatures, I'll usually wear 2 or 3 layers. I use a thin layer, almost like a liner, but it does have a little bit of warming characteristics in it, real thin. And then I'll generally layer up with a thinner merino wool sock and then a heavier one, depending on the air temperature and the water temperature, of course. One of the things that I found, especially in a pedal drive, when you're pedaling all the time, your feet are elevated, so you're not getting that blood flow. So just standing up, moving around, just keeping that circulation, and also keeping enough room that you can move your feet inside your dry suit and inside your boots. If you stuff it in there and you can't get that circulation flowing, it's definitely going to cool you down a little bit.
That makes sense. I mean, I have the WTB NRS wet boot, and like I said, I'll use 2 or 3 pairs of socks with that, and they still get cold. But I do try to move my toes inside of there. Maybe it's because it's too tight. I don't know, but maybe I need to upsize on my boot.
Well, and the other thing you want to do is don't overdress. You don't want to overdress your feet and then they're sweating a lot and then they're going to get cold. Even with the merino wool socks and stuff like that, your feet start sweating, you're going to feel cold. And everybody knows, I mean, once your hands and feet get cold, it's your whole body is starting to cool down.
Yeah. I took Matt out a couple weeks ago, and I think it was finally my hands just started getting cold. And I was just like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of tricks that you can do with that. Good winter gloves. And obviously neoprene gloves are great to have, but they're kind of a challenge getting on and off. So usually I don't even wear gloves, but I have my winter gloves stuffed underneath my seat or somewhere they're going to stay dry. And I put hand warmers in them. So after dealing with a fish, dealing with all that cold water, I can just stick my hands in those gloves and they're warm and back to normal really quickly.
Yeah, I kind of do something similar. I'll have like a real thin, like silky kind of glove, and then I'll put hand warmers in the palms, and I have wool gloves that go over top of it, and that usually does the trick, unless it's really cold. But
right,
Yeah, I'll be a believer in the neoprene stuff because I have a set of the NRS Hydro Skin gloves, and I'll wear those first, and then again some wool fingerless gloves for my main fingers, like these fingers that I use for casting and whatnot, just for feel. And I didn't really have a whole lot of issue. Obviously, your hands are gonna get cold, especially it's just gonna happen no matter what you have on there. But I want to jet back a little bit because you said you use the dry suit booties. Have you seen like a increase in like I guess temperature regulation or keeping warm with those booties in your dry suit?
I've never tried the bootyless dry suit, so I can't say, from testing, but in theory, it just comes down to keeping that cold water off of your feet, so it gives you an extra layer, an extra barrier. I can't imagine getting in that cold water without, warm socks on.
Yeah.
One thing I want to try though is the neoprene socks they make. I haven't picked up a set yet, but I'm interested to try those, see how they work, underneath the dry suit.
That was going to be my next question. That's kind of what I'm interested in trying too. I've never tried them.
And then, of course, they make heated socks, specifically, I think, for like skiing. And there's ones, you can get fairly cheap on Amazon and stuff like that, but they only last a few hours. Well, what happens after they die? Now your feet are really cold because they've been used to being warm all day. So the best ones are, I forget what the manufacturer is, but it's the best sock for getting out there and skiing. And they're $350, but you'll get 8-10 hours out of the thing. And man, some days I'm on the water 10 to 14 hours. I mean, it depends on how good the fishing is. One thing you realize about cold water fishing, you're cold until you catch a fish.
Yeah.
Once you catch a fish, you're good to go. It's like, all right, let's go.
Exactly. I think I just told Justin that a couple weeks ago. That's funny. Go ahead.
You get a little boost of adrenaline. You feel all the cold just drift off your body. And then it was the first time we were out. It was cold. I got a fish. I do winter rules. It got to the side of the boat. I was afraid of getting a treble hook stuck and it shook off. And I was like, well, I saw it. I almost touched it. I counted or whatever. And I felt warm again. I was like, oh, this is great. My hands warmed up immediately. And then it was like 20 minutes later, like the worst cold I've had since I was out there just hit me again. It's because my body was coming back down. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I got to catch a fish or I'm going to die. Like, use it as fuel at that point.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What's one of those things that can make you a better angler if you try it?
Yeah.
You just focus on, hey, I have to catch a fish to get warm. Another thing before we move off of the keeping your hands warm, you know how your dry suits have the latex cuffs or the latex gasket, and then you have a neoprene cuff over top. Well, you can stick a hand warmer right in here on the face of your wrist between the latex and the neoprene, and then cinch it down, and it's going to warm up that blood that's going into your hands. So that makes a big difference as well, especially if you don't like to wear gloves.
Ooh, that's smart. I never.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I didn't think about that either. Which you can't really do that with your feet. Maybe around your ankle, but I don't know if that'd help very much.
I mean, if you could get like something heated on like your femoral, I could see that like on the inside of your thigh, because that's right. I mean, that'll warm it up. That's a major blood artery. That's a ton of blood going through you. Yeah, because I know they make, like, again, for hunting, I've seen them, especially for late season deer hunting. It's a full face mask and head covering that has heated in the neck because of your jugulars right here. Again, a major vein. And that's been tested. Like, there's been actual studies that have proven if you can heat up your bloodlines, your whole body will react positively to it. And they've seen anywhere from, I was reading this the other day talking to somebody because he was talking about, he's like, I never in season hunt. It's too cold. It's like, well, as someone who's used one, I have one down here. I don't know where it's at because I have too much crap, but I've got one somewhere. And from somebody who's used one in late season, putting it through there, I mean, I felt considerably warmer. And the studies that they had to back that is they see an average of 4 to 6 degree temperature increase in your body temp. So you can really stand the cold a lot more, especially when it's windy and the air temp's a lot lower. Because obviously the goal is not to fall out of your boat.
Yeah,
that's not the goal. That's the worst thing that could happen. But dealing with air temps can be just as miserable sometimes, especially if it's
windy.
Even a medium windy day, not like a windy day where I'm out there in the summer cussing up a storm because my boat won't stay straight. But just like a medium windy day in the winter can take 20 degrees down to 9, and 9 degrees is a big difference than 20.
Yep.
So,
I know. Well, Chuck, me and Matt are from Dayton, Ohio here, so we don't get the extreme weather you guys do. But once it gets to like 25 degrees, we start to wimp out.
Well, one thing I do in those conditions, especially on Lake Erie, you start to get away from the shoreline, and there's no protection from the wind. So it significantly drops that temperature. So I know that my underlayers under my dry suit are going to keep me safe in the water. Well, how do I compensate for the air temperature without overdressing? And now you're trying to take your dry suit off, trying to take layers off because you're overheating yourself. What I do is a good pair of rain gear with they have like a rubber membrane in there, and it's just a great windbreak. Especially if you start cooling down, you pull your PFD off real quick, set it in your lap, put that on, put your PFD back on, and it's definitely going to warm you up a little bit. The other thing that you can do is they make these big body warmers. They're like Hot Hands or some other brand. And just unzip your dry suit and put it right here on your core. Zip your dry suit back, and your PFD is going to be pushing that. Obviously, you don't want it on your skin. I usually put it on my top layer, which going back to the putting hand warmers on your feet, the problem with that, what do you do when it gets too hot?
Yeah.
Because sometimes in the glove, those hand warmers get pretty hot.
Yeah.
So with those, you just pull them right off. If you have something like that inside your dry suit, now you're scrambling around and probably exposed because your zippers are open.
Yeah, that's true.
So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I can be the perfect example that if a zipper's open, no matter how small it is, you're going to find out really quick, because I put my dry suit on and I had my relief zipper open like that much, and a wind gust came through and I felt it immediately through every layer I had on, and I immediately like curled, and I was like, oh no, zip. I was like, gosh, that sucks, man. And it took me an extra couple minutes just to warm back up. It sucked.
My first test with the dry suit, I just walked in off the beach and got in about waist deep and realized my relief zipper was not shut all the way.
Oh, dang.
I check it every time. It's religious, and the funny thing is I always remind people to check their relief zipper. So I drove out we went to Cave Run Lake a couple of years ago when that ice storm came in and everything was frozen around here. My buddy just bought a dry suit, so we went to the closest water, fished for some muskie for a little bit, and then when we came back in, it was time for him to test his dry suit. And he checked his relief zipper before we went out and everything like that. But sometimes you got to relieve yourself on the water, and you don't get it all the way closed unless you make sure that it gets past that second dock.
Yep.
So he goes in the water, and I didn't have the camera ready. I'm like, dude, hold on. Where are you going?
Yeah.
He comes running out of the water, because he left his relief zipper open a little bit.
Oh, Lord.
But that only has to happen once.
Yep.
I bet it does. Believe me, I got a little wind gust, and I was like, nope. So now it just gets checked all the time. I checked it a couple times when I was out there. Like, I know I went past second dock. I kept looking down. I kept like tugging it a little bit.
Yep.
I was like, oh man, I'm not playing this game. I don't want to be cold. I hate being cold. Brad will attest. 65 degrees. I'm still in a sweatshirt. 70 degrees. I'm in a long sleeve. It's not till it hits 80 or plus that I'm comfortable. So Yeah, it just ain't. I can't do cold. It ain't for me. But, Brad, is there anything you want to hit on before we move on?
Yeah, I was gonna. We mentioned the merino wool. Do they make like base layer stuff, or are they just strictly socks?
They do.
Okay.
And the best thing to get for a base layer is almost like a onesie style.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, you're moving around a lot and your layers are starting to lift up on you, and then you start to get that gap and you're going to get cold. So having a full suit size works great. Just make sure it has a relief spot. That way you can use the bathroom real quick if you need to without pulling the dry suit off and going through all your layers.
I gotcha. Let's see. I'm trying. Sorry, go ahead and talk, Matt, if you need to. But I was trying to look for something to pull up here for it.
Well, actually, I'm trying to pull something up myself so I could buy one.
Yeah, I was looking for the merino wool base layer, so I could.
I was about to say if I don't. Oh, here we go. Well, that's not a merino wool. There you go. I found one from Smart Wool. Smart Wool makes good stuff. It has a hood. I'm not a huge fan of that, but but I mean the thing that I go to, like I use a lot of my hunting stuff. First Light is a company that I've used for hunting material, hunting clothes, and they're known for their merino wool. Their base layers are made of merino wool. But I have also noticed kind of what you said, moving around the kayak. I did notice my top layer popped from my lower layer, and I use Under Armour actually makes some really nice, almost skin tight with a little bit of warming material in them for extreme cold. And I use those as like my leggings and then a base layer because it's moisture wicking. So if you do get sweaty or anything, it'll wick that off, so you're not going to feel the cold. But even with all my layers tucked into that very bottom layer, they still were wanting to pop up. So yeah, a onesie merino wool would be a no-brainer for the simple fact you don't have to worry about a whole lot. Because even if your second or third layer is starting to move, that onesie's still there and still covering you 100%. So
right. And like you said, always tuck your stuff in as best you can. Some of it's going to come untucked. Even my pants. So I'll put my pants on and I'll put my socks on and I'll tuck my pants into my socks. Because when you're trying to get your dry suit on, everything's bunching up. That just keeps it down there because you start to expose some skin and you're going to feel the cold.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's kind of what I've done. So I got like this brand called Cider, I guess. It's a base layer. And then on top of that, I have long johns. And then I would have like some fleece joggers. And then, same with my chest and stuff. I'll wear the base layer chest, another long john shirt, and then like a sweatshirt on top of that. The sweatshirt's probably not a good idea just because it's cotton, but I'm sure I could find something else to replace it with it.
Yeah, never use cotton.
Yeah.
As soon as cotton gets a little wet, it starts wicking the heat away from your body. So cotton is a pretty deadly combination when it comes to cold water.
Yeah, so I need to figure that part out.
I do have a quick question. Oh, yeah. Sorry, continue. No, you're good.
I was just going to say, speaking of cotton, a lot of the cheaper underlayers or long johns that they sell at Walmart or any of the other shops, read the material.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those are like 50% cotton. If it has any cotton whatsoever, it is not the right thing to wear, especially in cold water conditions.
Good to know.
Yeah, for sure. The only question, I've had a couple people reach out that are wanting to get into cold water and they've asked about base layers, and I've told them, hey man, it's my first year. I just know what I've been told, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any experience with the NRS Expedition suit, the Union suit at all?
The base layers?
Yeah, it's a polyester, 97% polyester, 3% spandex. It's like 280 grams. I've had a couple people ask me about that, and I was looking at it myself before you mentioned a full merino wool onesie, which sounds way more warm. But I didn't know if you had any experience because I've had a couple people ask me. So
I've never tried that. The ones that I wear, I picked up from Cabela's, I don't know, a handful of years ago. They make extreme cold weather gear, and there's I think there's like a light version, a medium, and a heavy. The heavy is almost too much. So the one that I wear is a medium version. Obviously, you want it nice and tight fitting, but something that's got, a little bit of thickness, a little bit of bulk. The thinner stuff, depending on the material, it's going to work great, but you want a little bit of bulk in there too. Just a little bit of density.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, let's see here. We didn't hit the head. So, are you using some kind of hood, or are you just wearing like a mask, or what are you going?
I have a couple different things. It really depends on what the temperatures are once I get out there, or if I'm moving around a lot or catching a lot of fish. You want to be able to adjust, quickly for comfort. Just like cold water dangers, you start to overheat yourself. That can be potentially dangerous out there as well. So what I keep with me is I'll have neoprene balaclava. I think it's 5 mil, might be 3 mil. Fits nice, fits tight, but it's extremely warm. Sometimes it's too warm, but I always keep it tucked under my seat. So if I get cold, I could throw that thing on real quick. As far as cold water testing, I've never had any issue with just having a bare head, except for the fact when I was testing in that 2-degree wind chill. When my head came out of the water, it was a shock. It took me a second to just kind of shake it off and realize what was going on. But everybody's body works differently, and that's, again, why we test. Perfect example, a friend of mine over at the National Center for Cold Water Safety, him and his wife are sea kayakers, and every time they go out, they roll and they test their gear. Well, one day she got out there and did her roll and came out of the boat, and she popped up, and Moulton said, "What happened?" And she didn't really understand it at the time, and I didn't until she came on my podcast and explained the story, and I made the connection between my testing and what actually happened. As soon as your head hits that water, that's your central nervous system. You really need to know how that's going to, work, how it's going to affect it. So if you get out there and you test and you have that situation, get a neoprene balaclava. If it's too thick, get something thinner. But I have the really thick one. It's great for wind protection, and it just keeps me a lot warmer. That being said, I just use a regular, it's like a polyester blend, just a hat. And then I use like a trapper's hat over top of that, with all the fuzz on the inside. You can strap it around your neck. And obviously a buff helps too. So you can pull your buff up around your neck. And that does really well for me. And it also allows me to pop that stuff off if the sun comes out or the day continues and it starts to get a little bit warmer, or even at the times where you're out there when it's warmer and the sun starts going down and the temperatures drop, which that's another thing to pay attention to on cold water, is you're going to have so much of a temperature fluctuation. You got to be prepared for that, and just make sure you're not in a dangerous situation. Find yourself 2 miles offshore freezing because, the sun went down, the wind started blowing, and it's 30 degrees cooler than when it was when you launched.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know I'm on the hunt for one of those hoods myself, so I'm glad you clarified that, because it makes me feel a little bit more confident in trying to find one to take out there with me. So
yeah, I've looked at the Storm hood from NRS because it's a 2.5
back
millimeter
order, man.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, it sucks.
Yeah.
But I've looked at those, and then with a dry suit kind of before. Well, now it's changed my mind again, because before I thought I couldn't have anything in between, And then I went out and they're like, oh yeah, put something in between. Now you're saying, yeah, don't do that. So I was like, well, where am I going to put it? But I mean, the joy. So I use the NRS dry suit, and just like most dry suits, I'm sure yours is the same. It has the outer collar away from that, and the NRS storm hood will fit in any dry suit, and it'll actually tuck into that outer collar. So that's a great option. I've been looking at it. Of course, they're back ordered, which sucks. I can't find it anywhere, so it is what it is. I'll just keep rocking a beanie until I fall in one time. And
well, what brand is your hood that you're using?
What brand is that? It's just something off of Amazon.
Okay.
I think it was like $20. I went with the thickest one that I could find.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I don't really care. It doesn't need to be NRS or anything. I want one, so I might look into that.
Yeah, I can look up in my history, and hopefully it's still in there. If not, I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah,
probably
cool.
have a link posted somewhere.
We're all about saving money, so this show we've done shows where we talk about saving money on online shopping for fishing baits and stuff like that. So any way we can help people like that, that's what we're going to do.
Especially with this, you don't want to sacrifice on the dry suit to get the other stuff. Nobody's going to see your underlayers.
Yeah.
Anything that's neoprene is going to work kind of the way that it's designed to. Is it the best tool for the job? Maybe not, but at least it's the right tool, and that's kind of how I look at it, especially now that I'm outfitting a lot more people. And, there's days where people come out with their dry suits, but they don't have enough underlayers. They don't have enough gloves or a balaclava or anything like that. So, any way to save on stuff like that is definitely great, especially in business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's for sure. Is there anything we missed on this subject at all? I know
you got the head,
well,
dry suit, underlayers, feet, hands. Is there any way, because you do a lot of your stuff, obviously, like you said, 6 months out of the year, freezing temperatures. Is there any way you prepare your other gear? So not just your body, but your kayak, your fishing tackle, your motor. Because I know you said you mentioned you have a Torpedo now. Is there anything you do to kind of make sure that's cold weather ready?
Well, obviously you want to make sure that your kayak is, water ready. Just a quick pre-trip inspection. Make sure there's no cracks that you didn't see. Or anything like that. Make sure you pull the prop off of your drive or your Torpedo or electric motor, just to make sure you didn't pick up any line or anything like that along the way. The last thing you want is for something to fail and limit your ability to get back.
Yeah.
So I just kind of run through that, make sure I have my extra gloves, my extra hats, make sure my kayak is ready to save my life if it needs to. And one tip I will say, like the dry suit and my underlayers, I keep them in a bin, but I bring all that stuff in. I used to leave it in the trunk of my car, and I'd get everything ready, and then I'd put my cold dry suit on. And that dry suit been sitting in 20, 30 degree temperatures all night, and it's going to bring your temperature down. So I leave it in the house until I'm ready to leave, and just keep it in the truck. That way it's all warm. Same with the boots, any kind of boots, neoprene boots or hunting boots. Gloves, it's really not that big of a deal because I open up my hand warmers, stuff them in my gloves, and then I stuff them under my seats. So whenever I need it, whenever my hands are too cold, I just grab them and pop them in there.
Very cool.
That's a great tip to have, especially if because I know people like you said, like kind of like you, they hate wearing gloves. They won't wear them if they don't have to. So that's a great tip. When your hands do get cold, pop them in, let them warm back up, and then you can take them back off and continue to do what you're doing. You can have a little bit. You can kind of spread it out,
right?
Which is, it's kind of a mind twist because you're cold and then you're warm, and then you can feel like you can be cold a little bit longer, and then you're warm again. You're kind of tricking your mind into not letting your cold hands bother you as much because you always know you have an out by putting them in your gloves. So,
right. And another thing you can do is take a thermos of coffee, tea, or even just hot water, because generally coffee and tea kind of makes you, go to the bathroom a lot more.
Yeah.
But if you just boil some water, put it in a thermos, when you get cold, just pour a little cup. You can put your hands around it and warm up. Take a sip. It's going to put that warm liquid inside your body, and it's an instant not a hand warmer, but it's an instant body warmer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Another good tip, man. So
say full.
The hot water tip come from Jeff Little.
Oh yeah.
I always used to carry coffee out there, and I'm constantly using the bathroom, but just regular water. Plus,
it's funny.
It hydrates you a lot better.
Yeah, it's funny because doctors say that warm water is a lot better for you than drinking cold water too. So
it's a lot easier for your body to digest.
Yep, that's what I've heard. Interesting, but hey, some pretty good tips though. Let's see here. I think we hit everything. I mean, anything else that we want to hit before we end this?
The only thing I want to ask you is, what is the real life, not training, what is the worst situation that you've been in yourself? Because you've done this a lot more even than just us going on the river. We're going out hitting spots for a couple hours. We're not doing 10-hour days. So what situation have you been in that really kind of puts you to the test of your knowledge and your skill base in this?
Well, a lot of times it's those real situations that teach the knowledge. For example, I think it was 2017, 2018. There was 4 of us out there, kind of spread out a little bit. Nobody had radios at the time. Fortunately, it was summertime, so the water wasn't cold yet. Come to find out, one of my buddies actually, the kayak had cracked. It was taking on water. He didn't know it. After 3 or 4 hours, it just threw him in the water. Well, at that point, when I got the phone call, I had no idea where he was, because, I mean, on Lake Erie, everything kind of looks the same, especially on a weekend when there's a lot of boats on the water. So that's something that you want to prepare for. It doesn't matter what kind of kayak you have or what brand, they all crack. They all can crack. It's just plastic. Yeah. So, that's why we do the pre-trip inspection, just check for cracks and leaks and stuff like that. Also, make sure you're prepared for absolutely everything. Worst case scenario. My neighbor, he was lost on Lake Erie for 3.5 days.
Wow.
Yeah, just floating adrift. It was 28 years ago, so they didn't have a lot of the technologies they have now. And fortunately, they had a little cabin that they could get into one at a time and just warm up, because it was 3 to 5 footers out there. Early spring, the water was still cold, a little bit of rain on and off. And one of the things that they did not have was water. So they were heading over to Put-in Bay for a walleye tournament. Put-in Bay is kind of a party island, and they have a cooler full of Jack Daniels and beer for when they get there, and ice. Well, along the way, they were sucking on ice cubes to stay hydrated.
Wow.
So I carry a life straw. You never know when you're going to be in that situation. You need some rehydration. A lot of times we don't realize how dehydrated we are until we get in that type of situation. And the number one thing you need to live is water. Yep. So having that life straw handy, inside my kayak, I have basically a bailout safety bag, and everything stays in that, and that stays in my kayak. So I never forget it. I don't have to worry about it being in there.
Good stuff.
So that's something that you can definitely add to your arsenal and prepare about. It's actually on my podcast. I think it's episode 20 of the Lake Erie Kayak Anglers podcast, Jerry's story. And a lot of my preparations come from that.
Mhm.
you know, just analyzing and breaking down all the different things that he went through and how it could be prevented. You know,
Yeah.
nowadays we all have VHF radios. A lot of different ones probably have something similar. The one I use is Standard Horizon HX890, and it has a group monitoring feature. So you can actually look down and see your buddy's GPS coordinates. And there's a distress button on the bottom. So if they get, or actually on the back of it, so if they get in danger, they can grab that, just hit that button. It's sending their signal to the rest of the group, you know, to let them know that, hey, they need help. Here's their GPS coordinates.
That's a good idea as well.
I also carry a personal locator beacon. It's not really practical for a lot of the inland waters when you can see
Right.
both sides of the shore, but you know, Lake Erie can be very predictable, but it can be very unpredictable too.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know what's going to happen. Having a personal locator beacon, that might be the difference between you being found or, you know, floating to Canada.
Yeah. Better have your passport.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Well, the funny thing is that's where my neighbor was found.
That's crazy.
Really?
He was rescued by the Canadian Coast Guard, and he launched. I think it was out of Huron, Ohio, which you know is what 40 minutes, 60 minutes west of Cleveland.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, that's insane. But that you know, talking about the VHF and then your bailout bag, a lot of guys, kayaks are becoming a lot more popular than they were in the past. It's not just a river boat anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Brad have had our boats out on Dale Hollow, larger lakes. I know guys who fish every major lake. I mean, you fish Erie. I know guys who fish Lake Michigan, and they fish all the Great Lakes, and people take them out in the ocean. Having a bailout bag is a great idea for anybody, whether you're going in the south or the north, because a lot of these VH radios, most major lakes, especially large ones, if they don't have a Coast Guard, the people who are monitoring the lake do monitor radio calls and things like that. And a lot of these have distress buttons where they just flood the spectrum with distress calls. So, I mean, that's one of the more thing that could save your life. So if you fish a lot of these really big waters, especially if you fish them alone, it is a great idea to have a bailout bag, to have, you know, things that can save your life, because not every situation is like your neighbor where he floats for 3 days and is found.
Right.
A lot of people, I mean, they could be floating for ever because they, you know, I mean, stuff happens. It could happen. You can last weeks or you can last hours.
Yep.
So having those are a great idea to have.
Yeah. And also throw some kind of fire starter in there. You know, it's not practical for me on Lake Erie because it's not like I could just pull up to the shoreline. Maybe an island if I get to it.
Can't start a fire on your kayak.
Right. But inland, you know, it's perfect. It's perfect for you, or if you come across somebody in the water. You know, a lot of times it's not that people are trying to, you know, be dangerous and risk their life. They just don't know any better. So I always try to be in the mindset that I need to be prepared to save somebody else.
Right.
You know, so stuff like that, fire starting material, a little baggie of like lint or kindling. That'll get some wet kindling started for you. And another tip I got from Jeff Little was a little piece of cardboard. You can use it to fan the fire and get it started, or if it's real windy, you can actually create a barrier to give that fire a little bit of protection. But that's something that can save your life one day.
Man, that guy thinks of everything.
Yeah, dude, he's just a wealth of knowledge. It's insane. And it's everything. It's not just like kayak fishing. It's like, oh yeah, piece of cardboard can be used as a barrier or a fanning device for your fire. Like it's just off the wall stuff. It's awesome. But speaking of, like you said, people sometimes they just don't understand. We had a fellow podcast host, Brad Hurlboss, for the Fin Feather show on Paddle and Fin. There was a gentleman, I'm not sure if it was in Illinois where he was at or if it was up in Wisconsin.
I think it's Wisconsin.
I believe it was. He was out ice fishing and broke through the ice 3 times. Finally got out and, you know, luckily was able to make the hospital, save his life, because I mean, it wasn't going to turn out great for him. Brad was able to go out and find all this dude's gear that was just floating in the river or the lake for 4 days. But I mean, it's not necessarily people, a lot of times when we see boat accidents or especially jet ski accidents, we'll automatically, well, they're probably doing something stupid. That's 90% of the time. That's not the case. It's not like they were meaning to do it. But stuff can happen. You go out in your kayak, you don't think a 4-footer will roll you because you've done them hundreds of times until this 4-footer hits you just right and your boat decides to become a submarine. And,
Right.
It can happen. It's not like you understood the risk. It still happens. So having this stuff, whether you think you're super skilled in it or not, is just like you said, it can save your life. It doesn't matter your skill set.
Yeah.
So, but Chuck, thanks for coming on, man. A lot of knowledge and a ton of tips that I don't know about our listeners, but I learned quite a bit that I'll be taking from this.
Me too.
I was about to say, and Brad, I mean, he's already said great tips and he's been doing this a lot longer than me. So that makes me feel not as stupid. So, but Chuck, if you want to give a shout out again, where they can find you on socials and your podcast, shout that out so they know where to look.
I make it pretty easy for you. So you could just Google my name, Chuck Earls, and generally that'll bring you to all my different resources. I have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I have a podcast on YouTube, and it's also hosted on pretty much all the other podcast platforms. I also have a separate YouTube channel with all my cold water safety stuff. But most of that stuff can be found if you go over to my website, which is lakeeriekayakfishing.com.
There you go.
Fantastic.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your expertise on the subject. And it's been a fun one. So with that said, I think we'll end it here, man. You guys have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Peace.
guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You could support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes today.